Hello and welcome to the second beautiful episode of TavernTalk. I am Krystian from Teamworkcast, and with me here today is Patty.
Hello! I've come from afar. Libraries from afar.
Yes, indeed he did. And today we are going to talk about things in a serious fashion instead of hunting monsters.
But we are still playing Monster Hunter.
We are kind of still in the game. We kind of are still in the characters. And of course, even though we are talking about serious topics, we are not going to be completely humorless. To quote one of my favorite podcasts, the Experience Points podcast. Yes. So today, the last episode, we talked about Nietzsche's Archesian a little bit and about feminism. And we got pretty positive response from this. People really liked the new format, the Tavern Talk thing. And people, most of the people had like very, very insightful comments to what we were discussing. So that was pretty cool. What did you think about the response yourself, Nick?
You know, after listening to The Amazing Atheist, or what's his name, saying, "That's the internet, that's how it goes, Anita," and then seeing our responses and us being technically safe white dudes that people can respond to and talk civilly to, it's kind of I think it's a slap in the face to old Amazing Atheist, but that's for a whole other Tavern Talk.
We're going to take him down eventually, maybe. We don't even need to. He kind of takes himself down. I'm just going to say banana. That's all I'm going to say. Yes. Yes. I wanted to point out a couple of comments that we received on the previous episode, just to wrap up the previous topic a little bit. There was one comment which I thought was a little bit funny, which was by Modest123, which is like a very common thing that a lot of people are writing, like in those feminist posts, which is like this, is kind of like fake timeline. Of, first we were, the women were disregarding computer games as a childish thing, but then they weren't receiving attention and then they were trying to suck up to gamers, and now they're demanding that everything needs to cater to their needs. And, I'm not going to just discuss, why it's stupid. I'm just going to point out, like, one funny thing which I found, where, like, the timeline that this guy produced went to 2005. which I thought hilarious, because it kind of like put like a very specific like you could like reverse engineer the age of the person who posted this just looking at the timeline, and that's very often something that happens. Today in our episode we'll be discussing very old articles, and we will actually show you that like a lot of the discussions are centering around games are actually super old, like from very the 80s old. Like they were even there before we were born.
I don't know about me.
You are older than me? Are you older than me?
I'm 35 this year.
Gosh, you are older than me. So you were a toddler. You were pooping in your pants, and I was a hope in my. Yes.
The one thing about the whole age thing is that, like, if you look at the old advertisements for like the Atari,
yes,
they were all family oriented, all of them. Mom played, your sister played, everybody played, and there was this huge array of games. Yes. Different types of games. And I mean, really, because there were only little dots and lines and stuff, you couldn't tell a lot of things. But yeah, that's one of the things that disappeared.
Yeah, sadly. There was also I remember there was like a fake advertisement in the 90s about Quake 1, where they kind of faked this kind of old type, like the whole family playing it. Like everybody is like wearing like a sweater, but like with a Quake logo stitched in it, and like the entire family is like playing Quake and like grinning like. Ee! And that was like very funny, but generally yes, we've the entire games industry like kind of like focused in recent years very much on like a very specific stereotype of players, and that's not really healthy at all. And it's kind of like very weird, like a very weird argument to argue that we kind of like it this way. This is supposed to become a boys' club, and girls are not allowed. I mean, if you were in an actual like club. Like if you went to like a dancing club, and it was like an only male dancing club, you wouldn't go there.
I was just thinking about it, like
get out of there immediately.
The discotheque, like sometimes there's sort of manly women who kind of go in, and they're like, people treat them well, but they kind of dance by themselves off in a corner.
I mean, there are even women in gay clubs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, because it's fun. It's fun to have like multiple people, like different people there, not just the same kind of person. One thing I also wanted to mention is like a lot of people get very hung up on this strength argument. Like they're delivering all these examples of how women are on average weaker than men and how and stuff like that. And I always feel like I don't know. The thing with strength is that it seems like a very like narrow-minded way to look at things. Like physical strength in modern society is actually not that important anyway. Like we discover all these things that are machines and stuff like that actually overcome physical strength.
Yeah.
And like also like military, the way military works, physical strength is not quite as important as it was like in the medieval ages where you just club somebody to death. Well, I guess if you club somebody to death, then physical strength is important. But nowadays you're shooting guns at people. Like, physical strength is maybe not quite as important as it was previously. Probably still important, but not quite as important as previously. And also, I feel like this is also like a mindset of a... I feel almost like this is like a mindset of a role player. Like the strength attribute influences how much damage I do. So if you have lower strength, then you are a worse fighter. Yeah. And it's not quite as easy as RPGs are modeling it.
But have you seen advertisements for that movie Red?
No, I haven't.
It's Red and Red 2. It's a bunch of like old action movie people, so like Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I know the movie.
So there's a sequel coming out, and Helen Mirren, I think.
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
She's like the most badass of badass characters in that thing. I think it's amazing to watch. But
oh yeah, definitely.
This is kind of all bringing itself into today's topic.
Well, wait a minute. I wanted to also mention something like talking about movies. I feel like if you look actually at the history of movies, like all of the movies show a physically inferior hero defeating a physically superior antagonist somehow, like David versus Goliath situations, where always the hero is weaker than the enemy, but somehow outtricks them. So using this argument that, women are weaker, therefore they aren't supposed to be heroes in those games, is actually quite moot, actually, if you look at how stories are being told. Them being weaker would be actually an argument for why they've been even more suitable for being heroes in those kind of stories. And also, like, I want to also mention one thing that I felt like a lot of like the negative comments we received, like they weren't actually. It was clear that they actually never listened to us.
Yeah, or
because they mentioned things.
Out.
Well, they mentioned things that we specifically addressed, and we had to like point out, like, look, guy, we talked about this at so and so at some point so and so. So it kind of like shows something I was kind of I was a little bit concerned about. Like in this discussion, you always I feel like people always come in and they have already like a opinion of it without actually listening out what the other person is saying.
I also like the people trying to call us on the concept of bias.
Yes.
There were a few comments on there where they were yelling at us for not getting the word right by arguing the definition of a completely different word. No. I wish I could remember what it was, but it was amazing. I was like, what? No. Oh, they were talking about confirmation bias. That's what it was. Because we were trying to talk about bias within science as a whole and the problems that the funding mechanisms create within science and this bias that leads into the whole wherever the money is, that's where science is going to go. And this guy was talking about confirmation bias, which is sort of a people performing and doing social science research according to what they think the researcher wants to hear. And it's like, those are two totally different things, but they had just decided that they were going to.
Well, I feel like this, I can understand this position a little bit because the whole, that's like an entire like can of worms there. Like people are not used to thinking as science as something that has biases, so they naturally like that's something that sounds very provocative. But there is a whole topic. We can just Google like science wars. I think that's the term for it, right? Science wars.
Yeah, the science wars were this event in the '90s, which ultimately ended in the whole concept of postmodernism.
Yes.
And the end.
Well, postmodernism was a little bit earlier than that, wasn't it?
Well, it started in the '70s, and then it kind of had its climax in the '90s, because it was '89. People kind of say this is the beginning of postmodernism because a lot of the G8 countries or whatever realized that they were damaging the world just by simply existing, and so they needed to figure out what to do with it.
Oops, we're there, and that's bad.
But that's getting we're way off topic now.
No, but yeah, but that's like, as I said, that's like a new topic. Maybe we will get like in a future episode into this at some point. But yeah, that's kind of like a thing, and it's understandable because there's like different positions, and it hasn't been like resolved in like satisfying manner. It's just the people just parted and continued thinking what they were thinking. Shots were fired at both from both sides. So,
but now we're back into the remodernizing period. So we're heading back into modernizing, but with a conscience.
See. Yes, so let us move on to the new topic, because today we are going to talk about the taxonomies of gamers and the taxonomies of games into some respect.
Yes.
So Nick, is taxonomy related to taxis?
Yes, it is different types of taxis in Crazy Taxi, where you can make crazier money and crazier money. No, classification is basically a way to sort of sort things out. We kind of talked about what should we use as our definition, and I actually want to use a definition from the book, Sorting Things Out, Classification and Its Consequences. And what they say, and this is, so taxonomy is basically the practice and science of classifying things.
Putting things into boxes.
Yeah, most often it's associated with biology, Homo ludens, Homo erectus, all of those, like, man the player, man the tool makers. Yeah. All those Latin and Greek words that we pretend that we don't know. But in this book, Sorting Things Out, Classification and Its Consequences, they use, the definition is, a set of boxes, metaphorical or literal, into which things can be put to then do some kind of work. And they also add bureaucratic or knowledge production, but I don't think that's important to this particular definition.
Yeah, so when you create a taxonomy, first you invent a couple of boxes, and then you take the thing that was chaotic and not understandable and start sorting it by putting it into the boxes, and then ideally you find out something about the things that you were analyzing, because you just put them into boxes. And
like this book says, classifying things definitely has consequences for the thing that you're sorting out.
Oh, so what does it mean?
Basically, it's just a way for people to refer to things, because you can't really refer to say, hey, that stuff over there. You don't have a solid way for other people to kind of identify, you know. So it's a sort of like what's a good example? The classroom. You know that when you walk into a classroom, that people have been sorted out into teacher space and student space. Students have to sit at a desk or in a chair, and the professor who's going to lecture or talk to their students has like a podium or a table or some sort of thing that allows them to disseminate knowledge. So there's a billion different classifications out there. Kind of taxonomy of the classroom is that, you know, a desk is where a student sits, a podium is where a person. So that sort of thing.
I feel like that kind of crosses a little bit also in roles, like what kind of roles you play. But I would feel like a very like a typical taxonomy maybe that a lot of people maybe experience, like when a teacher has like a specific opinion of you, like you know, when the teacher thinks you are a lazy person. Like the teacher creates taxonomies to put students into, and if you're a lazy person, then whatever you do, you kind of can never. Will always identified as being a lazy person.
Or if we wanted to take this back into video games, hardcores and the casuals.
Yes. So that's why I wanted to discuss this, because that's like a very common taxonomy that actually everybody in the industry, including gamers, that's the most interesting thing. Like it is not only like a taxonomy used by game makers and like publishers, but also by gamers themselves.
Yes.
A one that caught like wildfire, a very simple one, just consisting of two boxes.
Yes.
Of the casual box and of the hardcore box. And sadly, like this used to be actually a way of, you know, thinking differently a little bit about games, you know.
Yeah.
This used to be a way of publishers like trying to reach out to new audiences and trying to create different kinds of games. But I feel like among the gamers kind of took hold of it, and they kind of made this kind of like almost like an insult. Oh, you filthy casuals.
And this is a consequence of classifying this way.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting because you see kind of like all the repercussions of taxonomy at work. But no, the reason why I wanted to discuss this is because this is like a very I feel like this is like a very limiting perspective on how to look at gamers. So I thought we used this episode to look at different kinds of taxonomies because there's a huge history of people thinking about games, thinking about gamers, and a huge history of people trying to create different kinds of taxonomies.
Yes.
That might make us think a little bit differently, that make us reconsider things, that make us maybe come to different kinds of insights beyond just the casual and hardcore stuff.
And there's a ton of writing about this stuff. You can start out with, if you really wanted to, Homo Ludens, which is man the player, which gets into this whole, like, the consequences of play.
Oh.
And the concept of play, which ultimately is a separating thing, because when play begins, then there's a whole new set of rules, and all the people within the game are different than the people outside of the game, and it's...
The magic circle jerk.
Magic circle jerk. Yeah, thank you, Zimmerman.
Anyway, let us maybe start with, because we're talking about Caillois and Huizinga, and let us start with like this traditional taxonomy. Caillois?
Yes. I think it's Caillois, or I've heard Caillois, I've heard Caillois. I don't know.
If it's French, and it should
he
be,
is
I
a
guess,
Frenchman.
then it should be like Caillois.
Okay.
I would say. Maybe the French commenter can let us know if we pronounce this right. These guys are old, right?
Well, Huizinga actually wrote all of his stuff while he was in an internment camp during World War II.
Oh yeah, so
and he actually, I think he died there.
So he didn't really talk about video games, so to speak.
No, but his stuff definitely, he kind of points out the problems, because our definition of play sort of sorts things out in between play as a childish aspect, because our root for the word play comes from like a Greek definition, which is like the capacity of animal and children to jump, so it's like frivolity. An unserious, unadult thing to do, even though we play the game when we're doing stocks and stuff like that.
Just dicking around.
Yeah, and so what Caillois ended up doing is he went in and defined different types of activities that people engage in when they do play. And so he had Agon, which is like balance competition. This is the type of play that I think is dominant right now.
So it's like StarCraft would be Agon. Yeah.
And then Aliyah, which is passivity, randomness equalizes everything, so maybe like Yahtzee.
So which is like the game of chance, so to speak.
The game of chance, yeah. Mimicry, improvisational role-playing, spectacle, which I think we can... Those are kind of your pen and paper role-playing games, I think.
Like pretending to be something that you're not.
And then he has... Is it Ilinx? Ilinx? I am not a Greek-speaking... is disorientation or pleasurable torture, which is sort of like pin the tail on the donkey, I guess.
I would also maybe say like, disorientation. Wouldn't that be like racing games also?
Racing games also QWOP.
Oh yeah.
So it's just those games where you're like, oh my god, this is amazing, but you're being tortured the entire time.
Oh, torture, pleasurable torture.
He also.
Well, I guess that would be also like being on a roller coaster, for example.
Yeah.
Because somehow it's alarming because you're being like, whoa! But on the other hand, you kind of like, you laugh all the time. Because like, whoa!
So those are the four types of play that he defines. But then he also has Paideia and Ludus.
That's what was like the four kind of different kinds of pleasure that you can experience while playing games.
Yeah.
And then he also generally puts like games into two top categories.
Yeah, which is instinctive exuberance, which gets back to that whole frivolity thing. You're just running around like a child or an animal in the morning and just jumping around being an idiot. Or not an idiot, but that's maybe the wrong word to use.
Yeah, like a silly person.
Silly person. And then Ludus, which is the reward of mastery. So you become better at this game, better and better in League of Legends.
Yes. So that's generally like, that's kind of like the distinction between game and play.
Yes.
The one is like the, competition, mastery, stuff like that. And the other is like, you just start, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto, and you just do something weird with the cops and kick people and whatever. And you don't care if you lose or not.
The one thing that is probably maybe good to mention here is that both of them say that everybody plays, and every like even animals play.
Yes.
So play is important.
Yeah, like even dogs play.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because you always assume that games are like a cultural product. That's something that people have invented.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true. But apparently it's something like much more fundamental, because again, animals play. So this must be something that goes even beyond the human experience, and actually something that is maybe more fundamental to what it means to be a living being.
Yeah. And I mean, our play is a bit more structured than like animal play, which I think is okay to say. But because there's was it George Herbert Mead talks about socializing as a child, where you play and do whatever until you start getting into team-based activities, and then that play ends up kind of socializing you into how our society is set up. All
right, but I guess that again that's a little bit more, we're getting like a little bit off track. So there are like we had like those 4 categories. When was this written? Do we know?
I think he wrote it in the 70s.
Yeah, so he was talking generally about games, board games, about sports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's like an astounding like there is a relevance for this for video games as well.
Yeah, and it's definitely had an impact on games as a whole.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the Caillois and Huizinga is like the typical person to just quote when you do like an academic article about video games.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
your base.
If you don't have those in your literature, then you're doing something wrong, man.
Yeah.
I really like, especially like the final one, the pleasure over torture thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, especially nowadays, if you have like definitions by Sid Meier, like a game is a set of interesting choices.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of misses the point of what game is all about. Sometimes it's just about, just the acceleration of physical activities, like, because it's fun to hit people over the head because it feels nice. Because there's this ride that's always at carnivals and amusement parks where it's just this massive spinning surface. And you're pinned to the side as the floor slowly drops down. Yeah, I know, yeah.
That's all I can think about.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, like, just it's kind of like silly. If I was in a ferry, in like one of those. No, it wasn't a ferry. Was it? It's called a Heine Fest. It's at a city where I live in. It's kind of like once a year there is like a festival in a city. They close down all the inner city streets and fill them like with attractions and with booths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And of course they have like those huge machines where you strap yourself into and they throw you around in various different directions and hopefully you will puke. And if you look at them from a rational standpoint, that's kind of like the most silly thing you can. Like, you are a frail human being.
Yeah.
You are like you're so easy to be damaged, but you strap yourself into this huge contraption, in those like even more elaborate contraptions that spin you around in those various directions. And yet you're having fun. It's for enjoyment because you like being spun around.
Yeah. They have this ride at Cedar Point, which is one of my favorite. This is an amusement park near my hometown. And it's this ride. They called it the Witch's Wheel, and so you sat in this disc, and this disc would slowly get to 90 degrees against the ground, and so you're spinning around and your cart doesn't move, so you're upside down looking at yourself spiraling towards the ground at like 50-60 miles an hour, and you're like, yay,
this is awesome. I'm gonna die. Yeah. I'm so close to dying right now.
So in classifying all of this stuff, like when you're designing a game, what? So you do a lot more design stuff than I do.
Yeah.
What impact does all of this stuff have on you?
Well, that's a problem. Like the design practicality for a lot of those things is also a little bit questionable, I feel, because like quite often like games cannot be like breaking down into those 4 categories. Like even if you take something like StarCraft, which was like the first category, I guess, like the competition thing.
Yeah.
StarCraft also has a couple of... I mean, that's a really complex game. It has like a lot of elements of all the 4s, actually.
Yeah.
Like you have, of course, you have the competition. That's why people are playing this, because like at least they're like the top level players. But you also have a little bit of chance in there, because it's just so complex that those things are just happening randomly. Like you have to be lucky at some point.
Yeah.
Just pick the right, I don't know, build for this one without even scouting. And there's also a little bit of this vertigo thing at the end, because it kind of looks nice. You can zoom around, you can look at those, and kind of like there's like physicality to how the enemies die and stuff like that. I mean, like things like exploding, and you're like, woo, explosions, woo.
But you have all these troops all over the map. You're like, what am I doing? Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. And what was the third one?
Third one is mimicry.
So yeah, you are pretending to be in space and commanding the space army. I mean, you cannot deny that this is also like
my immersion.
Yeah, like people get very upset when they're... I guess maybe in StarCraft not so much, but maybe if you're playing the first-person mode, not first-person, single-player mode. So every game has a little bit of each one of those. And you never begin the game saying, like, I'm gonna do something that is all about Aegon. It's like that's not really like a good starting point for you. I guess it could be, but it's you generally are already much further ahead if you when you have like an epiphany of what kind of game you want to do. So I think it's kind of a very academic way of dealing with this, but maybe we can find like a different approach to this. So let's just move on to like maybe a more modern taxonomy.
One thing that might be worth mentioning is that this is a way to classify games and not gamers.
That's true. So there are ways of classifying, or maybe specifically there are games of ways of classifying the enjoyment of games. How do you enjoy a game? And these are the 4 dimensions. And honestly, I was actually doing this recently. I feel you can do it much more granular. I think there is much more enjoyment, and I'm actually working on my own taxonomy of this kind, and I have way different things in there.
What sort of things do you? I guess what do you mean when you say granular?
Like little details. Like for example, there's one very specific enjoyment in games which I never hear people talk about, which is the enjoyment of breaking a game.
Ah.
And I feel like it's like Monster Hunter is a good example, like the Kelby bow.
Yeah.
Like doing something that is overpowered, or striving to find something that's overpowered. That is quite often a very, very important motivations for gamers. Like even if it's not specific, like implicit motivations. Like, I'm trying to game the system. I'm trying to find something that the game designers maybe never considered.
So this sounds like it's if we were to take our next example, that you're talking about players who are achievers.
Yeah, but it's like a very specific, thing to point down. But yes, let us maybe move on to the next categorization, which is by Bartle.
Good old Richard Bartle.
Who was Richard Bartle?
He is a researcher in England, if I remember right. And he is overly important in an honorable way. I'm not saying he's,
Yeah.
He researched MUDs.
Yes.
Multi-user dungeons?
Multi-user dungeons, which for the younger players, I mean, I never used a multiplayer user dungeon myself, so I'm not even like talking from a a superior perspective here. But I guess it was a little bit like a combination of a text adventure and Minecraft.
Yeah, well, it's probably more like the dot hacks or the net hacks and stuff like that. Which those are more graphics.
Oh, net hacks.
Yeah.
Well, net hacks were like roguelikes, I would say. Like they were not so much multiplayer.
Yeah, well, I'm saying net hacks kind of came out around the same time, right?
That's right. They came around where in internet or like generally like network communications were very, very limited, so you could only send text if you in best case scenario. So they were basically glorified chat rooms. Maybe that's a different way to put it. Like you're thrown into a room, like a virtual room where you can like talk to people, And there were but there were still like some kind of ways of interacting with people in different ways. You could create rooms,
Yeah.
you could connect rooms, you could interact with objects.
Yeah.
And you could apparently attack each other. So there were like fundamental basic. There were basically the fundamentals of MMOs nowadays.
Yeah, they're MMOs are basically graphics attached to MUDs.
Yes.
At this point. And so this article, Hearts, Clubs, Diamonds, and Spades, Players Who Suit MUDs.
Yes.
I think it came out in
1980.
In 80, really?
Yes, in 80.
It had to have been. Are you sure it's not 90?
So I made a mistake. So it was 1996 after all. So it wasn't that old. But he was actually developing mods for quite a long time. So I guess he started in the 80s doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the things that he references are like articles from the 80s and 90s. So yeah. So he was doing this, and he was leading a lot of those mods and stuff like that. And so apparently at some point he started to do like surveys among the people who play those mods to just to get like an idea of why people are doing this, what motivates them. And he developed established 4 different categories for those people.
Yeah.
Based on the interviews he did, he kind of analyzed them and put them into 4 different categories. So what are they again?
They are achievers, which are the. I don't want to use these diamonds and spades.
Let's just leave them away. It's stupid. That's one of the. Because it even doesn't work in different languages. Because there's a club is not a club.
So
you know what I mean?
he put all of these into suits of a card deck, a deck of cards. 52 cards.
but we just forget those and just call them by the names because it's easier to remember. So they're achievers.
Yes, achievers, killers, explorers, and socializers.
So what do the achievers do?
So the achievers are your dudes like the speedrunners in Monster Hunter.
Are they? Nick, are they?
I would say. So what he defines is achievement within the game context. And he says players give themselves game-related goals and vigorously set out to achieve them. This usually means accumulating and disposing of large quantities of high-value treasure, cutting a swath through hordes, and there weren't boss monsters at that time, but defeating monsters in a specified time, I think it fits into this.
Yeah. Okay, but I really like also the way he has like quotes, like imaginary quotes from those people.
Oh, I know. It's awesome.
So the achievers say, "I'm busy," or "Sure, I help you. What do I get?" Or "So how do you kill the dragon then?" Or "Only 4,211 points to go. Woo!"
And if you play MMOs, especially in WoW right now, the achievers are the achieve hunters, the guys that just sit there and work up their achievement score.
Yes.
Oh God.
Or I guess previously it was the guys who were trying to get like to the level cap as quickly as possible, I guess.
Yeah. And those guys are still in WoW too. Like, oh, the level cap's been raised to 95. I'll get there in 12 hours.
Yeah, I guess that seems like the most obvious way to play a game. You play the game to win the game.
Yes.
And those are the guys who are trying to win the game.
They brag a lot too. Like,
yes,
I did this. And,
because this is like the way of how they perceive other people. If they look at other people, they see like, oh, what kind of loser is this? He's only level 55.
King of Kong is about 2 achievers.
King of Kong? Oh, that's true. Yeah, like the documentary about Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
Yes, but let us move on. So they're also the explorers. So how are these explorers different from the achievers?
What he says is that explorers delight in having the game expose its internal machinations to them.
That seems very similar, doesn't it?
It does, and until you get to the quotes where he says, "You don't know the shortest route from Obscure Room 1 to Obscure Room 2? I tried that once. I haven't tried that one. What's it do? Why is it that you can carry uranium, you get radiation sickness, and if you put it in a bag, you still get radiation sickness, but if you put it in a bag and drop it, then wait 20 seconds to pick it up again, you don't?"
Yeah, so these are like the kind of players that seek like secrets or like uncommon solutions for things, or like try to uncover all the game's mysteries, try to game the system a little bit.
I think at this point we call them the hackers.
A little bit, yeah, hackers. That would be good.
If we were to put them into Monster Hunter terms, we'd say that they're not the people who have hacked cats; they're the people who create hacked cats.
I don't know if see, that's the thing, because I'm not really sure if explorers necessarily want to change the game. They still are using like.
True.
So I would maybe say that maybe these are the people who like who like excel at finding like exploits to farm money or something like this.
That's true. I guess in my mind, the hacker who creates the hacked cat is doing it because they're exploring the weaknesses within the code of the game.
Yeah. Maybe that would be like a special like the G rank version of the Explorer.
Yeah, because the hackers, I mean, they do it not because they want a quick way through the game. They want to break the game entirely, which is what I think that explorers kind of fit into. Well,
there's a different kind of player which he also mentions, which is kind of about breaking things, which is the killer.
The killer.
And the killers want to basically dominate other people. They want to force themselves onto other people, usually by just killing them.
Yeah. But what's funny is killers can't... Like, this has been the game type that's mostly been programmed out of games for the past probably 20 years.
Yeah, like you have like non-PvP servers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For good reason, because their only goal is to spoil the enjoyment of the game for others. To some extent, they want to, they think they are superior, or they want to show their superiority, or they're basically just trolls. I mean, they're trying to spoil the fun, and the better they are able to spoil the fun for others, the more enjoyment they get out of the game, right?
Yes, I really like the quotes that he put in there for them. Coward, die, 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 die.
Yeah, and he also mentions that killers are not people of many words.
Yes.
So there were trolls even back in the days, and they are basically called killers by him. And there's of course a fourth category, which is the opposite of killer, so to speak. It is the socializer.
Yeah, this is I tend to fall under this quite a lot. I enjoy hanging around killers mostly because I enjoy socializing with them. Mm-hmm. but so they're the type of people that they just want to talk to you. They're gonna help you out if you need something. They don't really care that they're playing a game. They just like talking to people. They're
using this as an excuse to get to learn to learn other people, like to meet other people. Like the quotes here are. No, wait a minute. This is a different one. Hi! Or, yeah, well, I'm having trouble with my boyfriend. which is also the only like gender specific quote from the entire thing. But what happened? I missed it. I was talking. Or really? Oh no, gee, that's terrible. Are you sure? Awful, just awful. I don't know, the quotes are a little bit unspecific, but generally, yes. People who talk a lot, who socialize, who get into like teams, who like to be fighting in teams and not care so much about what they achieve or what they discover. I guess it's important what they achieve and what they discover, but only in the sense of because it is another talking point. And not because they want to be there themselves, necessarily. So these are the four. What do you think about the four categories?
I think that if you watch MMO development, that you see a lot of people kind of a lot of designers realizing that they need to have these sorts of things in there. So, like PvP was very important for things like Ultima Online. Even as stuff like what was that one game that was in the 80s? Home? Or no?
80s?
Oh gosh, I can't remember what it was.
80s?
Yeah, it was in a one of the very first graphic MMO type games.
Oh, the only one there was Meridian 68 or something, but there was one previously. I know there was one before that. I forgot. It was something like Home, wasn't it?
I think it might have been Home.
I don't know.
There's this amazing discussion when somebody killed somebody. And there was just this guy that walked around murdering all of these players because they had no way to stop them. And they just kind of, like, the quotes from the designers at the time were like, well, that's interesting. I didn't think people would really do that.
One thing I found very interesting is that he also, using those four categories, he was able to establish two different axes.
Yes.
To create like some kind of like coordinate system of players. And one axis goes between acting and interacting, and the other one is perpendicular to it, and it goes between players and world.
Yes.
So the killers are acting upon other players, whereas the socializers are interacting with other players. And the achievers are acting upon the world, whereas the explorers are interacting with the world.
Yeah.
I thought that was like pretty neat to kind of like establish like fundamental principles behind those four categories.
So I guess with this particular taxonomy, and this one's been around, I mean, people have been using this almost as much as they've been using Caillois and Huizinga for forever.
Yeah. This is one of the
foundational.
Yeah, it's really one of the Citizen Kane of taxonomies.
And I mean, it's had what sort of implications do you think that this has had on?
Oh, I'm sure like every MMO developer at least must have used this as a bible. Like things like World of Warcraft were created with this in mind.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. And I don't know if I think it is very useful because it creates like a very understandable and palpable like characters for that you can cater to.
Yes.
Like, oh, so if you have this, you can immediately imagine like what an explorer type person would think about a certain thing. Something that we discussed in a previous episode, the concept of personas. Game designer creates personas because it's like an audience is like not very something that you can imagine in your head because like huge amount of players with different things. So you imagine like a very small, like very particular people that stand for a large amount of players, and these are the personas. And I feel like the four characters that Bartle presents here are very good personas to work towards.
I think one implication that it's had is that it defined, I guess technically, it defined boundaries. I think player boundaries, because if you think about game development over the past probably. There's been almost 20 years since he wrote this article.
Yeah.
It's what, 17 years, I guess, now? Anyway, if you look at the concept of killers and explorers, those two axes have been almost completely obliterated at this point.
Oh, you think so?
Interacting with the world in the ways that I think explorers do, which is trying to find glitches and exploits that they can use. We have the coming of the terms of service, the EULA, the user agreement, user limitations, and stuff like that. And those are policed hardcore. Like, it's gotten to the point now where, if somebody in World of Warcraft finds an exploit and uses it, they might end up getting banned. And so it's sort of, the explorer has essentially become the person that walks around the world looking at stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Like that definition changed me a little bit, but it kind of depends. I don't know if the explorer was, because you were trying to push the explorer into like this hacker kind of type, but I'm not really sure about that.
Well, because they're interacting with the world.
That's true. They're interacting. Like they're not trying to what you're saying would be more like acting, not interacting. Right, you would be trying to force it into what they want it to be, not trying to work with what's already there.
If we could cram another thing into this, it would be interesting to have the interacting with designers. Because there's obviously the world is the game world, but it's also all of the programmers who have created the game world. So there's this sort of person that's kind of cropped off of the explorers, where they're not necessarily interacting with the world, they're interacting with the programmers who have created the world, and they're exploiting the problems in their prose or the problems in their code. They're kind of like killers, but they're not going against players, they're going against designers.
The system. Yeah. I'm not part of the system. You rules to the ground. I feel like if you're talking about who we are, I feel it's always interesting to apply this taxonomy of people who you know.
Yeah.
So you said you would socializer. I would say Shepard has some explorer qualities to him.
Yes, but he's definitely Naxella is our achiever, I think.
Naxella is definitely an achiever because we saw how he reacted, for example, where we decided to restart the game with fresh characters.
Oh yeah.
And he was super upset about this. And that's like a typical achiever attitude in this case. He just doesn't like to start to be like down on the ground level again. He doesn't want this. He likes the perspective from the lofty grounds he achieved himself.
It's funny though, like I've sort of realized in the past few years, because instead of having to fight to survive, I've just been sort of like growing, realizing what type of person that I am. So like if you watch the podcast, depending on who's there and what they're doing, my play skill varies wildly. Because if there's more people there's more people for me to interact with, so I kind of, my want to achieve goes down. And so I just sit there and socialize and do the bare minimum to like help get through the monster.
Yeah, I don't know what I am in this category. That's the problem I have, because I feel like all of them, maybe except from killers. I don't want to be killer, but like explorer and achiever and socializer all like feel interesting to me. Yeah. And so, for example, I will be doing like achievement hunting for some games. Yeah. And I will be like trying to fight like enjoying like weird exploits and stuff like that. But also I like, with you guys, I really love chatting on a podcast. So yeah. I don't know. I guess I would also probably say socializer in the end, because I'm just not that hardcore of a player for Monster Hunter, at least.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where I really dislike playing games by myself.
Oh wow! I'm not that extreme, I must say. Never mind. I wanted to also maybe mention some other things I noticed. Later on, he goes very much into like the ways the different types of players interact with each other. Yeah. And he also one thing that was very smart about him, I thought, was that he never claims that an equilibrium of he never claims that there's an equal amount. There should be an equal amount of those players. Yeah, but he does say that there is some kind of equilibrium there. That all four players need to exist in some numbers in order for the game to be fun. Because once one of the types of players gains dominance, then the others leave. Yeah, and then eventually, the dominating type of players also leave because they need the others to thrive.
It's funny because the killer is constantly taken away. Yeah.
But the killer is important. Like for the socializers, he brings the drama. For the achievers, he kind of brings also the danger that that makes the achievement more meaningful because they're able to prevail against the killers. Yeah. And for the explorers, he might be providing some interesting new exploits. The
interesting thing is, if we want to take World of Warcraft, because I think World of Warcraft is probably the measuring stick, the dipstick, if you want to go. At a certain point, I think it was probably around the beginning of Wrath of the Lich King. World of Warcraft switched because they realized that they cannot cater to endgame players for forever, and they also couldn't allow people on PvP servers to just be killed whenever, because the high-level players will just go to low-level areas and murder everybody. Yes. And at a certain point, they started trying to interfere with the natural kind of selection process that happens with gamers, the types of gamers. Yes. And over time, instead of providing a way for players to kind of define their own roles, they've tried to make it to where people can only define themselves as socializers, explorers, and achievers. Now, every time something happens to where a player can kill people, recently, there was an exploit where you could take high-level monsters from right outside of Orgrimmar, because in the current expansion, you're gonna the climax of it is going to be against the current leader of the Horde. Yes. You could take these high-level monsters and pin them in the auction house of Orgrimmar. And Orgrimmar is probably where everybody is. Yes. And so these people would just murder everybody. So the players themselves couldn't kill people, but they still figured out ways to kill people.
Yeah, of course, they always do.
And so those players were banned, the exploit was removed, and then the concept of safety within this game environment started to come back. And so I think that this implication, identifying this type of behavior that is classified as probably bad in some way, has had this huge implication on MMOs as a whole, which I feel still is the reason for MMOs declining overall. But that's a whole other discussion.
Interesting. I would maybe add into this thing that this classification is like very specific for like multiplayer games.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to apply. Like, it falls apart once you try to apply this to single player games. It kind of becomes very difficult to understand what Socializer does in I don't know, like in Super Meat Boy. Like what?
Yeah. Well, they post on because you've talked about this before on the podcast.
Yeah.
Where games, no matter if it's a single player game or a 0-player game, even you're going to go out and socialize with people who play, and so you end up assuming that sort of role, but not within the game, with outside of it. That's
true, but then we are not talking about gaming, but about metagaming.
Yes.
And that's kind of like, I don't know, that you cannot really design. It's very difficult for a designer to design this space that is like shaped around the game. But another thing I would maybe answer to this kind of categorization is that it is a little bit, how do I put it? It is a little bit neat. You know, that there's like just 4, and they're like polar opposites, and they can be mapped into different axes.
Yeah,
it seems like it is very precious.
Yeah,
and a little bit too symmetrical. I feel player behavior generally is messy.
Yeah,
and so it is kind of. I feel like a taxonomy should reflect this in some way, and so that it is a little bit messy. There we have some taxonomies which are a little bit more messy.
Yeah,
and I generally enjoy messy taxonomies more because they. I feel like these are, for me, this is a sign that this was actually based on real data.
Yeah. The one thing that's kind of interesting, and I'm totally going to put kind of a reading list with this, I think. There's this book called... let me pull up my Kindle. It's by Mary Douglas. It is called Purity and Danger. And what this book is about is that for whatever reason, the countries that have adopted capitalism all have a common idea that things must be neat in order for them to be orderly.
Yes.
And so there's this weird sort of taxonomy that has appeared over time where we go to what they call primitive cultures and observe their dirtiness and their disarray as something that is not something that we should do. And so we try to create this neat and tidy space for all of ourselves. And everything always falls outside because the norm is something that nobody is.
Yeah.
It's this thing that comes out of the way that we measure ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we end up defining ourselves not how we are normal, but how we aren't normal.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And, you know, the opposite is also true of this, too. And I'm sort of doing this whole taxonomy thing, but I really like the concept that anything that we classify has a consequence, because if something falls outside of it, what are we going to do?
Yeah. Let us move on, because we have so many more taxonomies, we just stayed so long on Bartle. Bartle, because the thing is, Bartle, at the end, he's very important, but at the end of the day, he's not very interesting, I feel.
No.
This is very basic stuff, very simple stuff, and he doesn't really he doesn't even try to add more resolution into this, like creating maybe sub-boxes to put people in.
Yeah.
He just focuses very much on the interactions, and he creates like the stable system of those 4 people who balance against each other.
He created this neat and tidy thing that people could respond to for the past 20 years and hasn't had to do anything since.
It is a very idealized version of a taxonomy, I feel. Let us move on to Timmy, Johnny, and Spike.
And so we're moving from player taxonomies, and not necessarily defined before a game, but that sort of come out of it. Whereas Timmy, Johnny, and Spike, I think Magic revolves around these player types because the game itself is designed around them.
No, they came afterwards, after the game was designed. They were kind of like a response of the team. Well, nowadays it's not anymore, but initially, like, Magic was just a thing that Richard Garfield did. And then, as you know, there was like a huge team at Wizards of the Coast where they were trying to release new editions of the trading card game Magic the Gathering, and they wanted to kind of find out what kind of people are playing those games, what do they really enjoy about Magic. And so they started to have like questionnaires and interviews with players to kind of find out what people really enjoy about this game. And over time they developed different personas. So again, the persona idea of the designer creating like an imaginary person they cater to. Or at least not necessarily cater to, just to have like something that you can imagine like a response to a thing that you're designing.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it goes too far out of bounds to say that that games are designed for roles, and that these taxonomies kind of represent those roles that people design
bit, yes, to some extent. But the interesting thing is that with the Magic thing is that it grew very slowly. So they first had one, and then they added another, and then they added another. So this, unlike the other systems we had previously, where they created like this entire taxonomy as a whole system.
Yeah,
this grew organically, and they just identified individual roles, as time went on. And it's interesting that they're not supposed to cover the entire player population. They are just like extremes.
Yeah, and what's funny, if you play like the Magic video game.
Yeah,
each of their pre-constructed decks falls very much into these three sets, and then the space between those.
That's very possible. So maybe let us talk about the different things. So first we have Timmy. Timmy is considered the power gamer, and if you play Magic the Gathering, Timmy likes to win big, they say. So he really likes the big, powerful cards. He doesn't like the cards that are tricky, that are trying to out-trick other people. He just wants to have the most powerful spells in the world. He likes to go over 9,000!
Yeah, that's me.
He likes his card to be impressive. He is often young, but not necessarily. Like, Timmy kind of has this implication as this, "Hello, this is Timmy, and this is my favorite card. It is a 12/12 flying creature, and I can never summon it. I never summoned it in the game, but it is the best card in the world." You kind of imagine this, but it doesn't have to be. Like, everybody enjoys powerful cards to some extent. He's a very social gamer, so he wants the powerful cards to show off the cards, in the schoolyard, in front of his friends. He discusses the cards. He tells his friends, he gets like a powerful card from Booster, and he's like, guys, look at what I just got. This is amazing. I never thought creatures went to double digits. So, and the interesting thing is, I think that's what most important realization about this. Like, the quality. He doesn't just want to win. The quality of winning is important. The way he wins is important.
Yeah.
So he wants to win big. So if he plays 10 games, and he wins one game of those 10 games, he loses 9 of those, but wins once with the most powerful creature that in his deck, then he will be happy. Because he was able to summon the Leviathan or the Force of Nature or whatever and just destroy the enemy, just like he planned. Guys, this card just rules. If I get him out, he will just destroy the enemy. That's Timmy. I'm making a mockery of this, but I'm actually probably more of a Timmy than I can admit. So this is Timmy, the power gamer. Then we have Johnny. Johnny is the creative gamer. And Johnny likes to win with style. He likes to win on his own terms. So he likes to, for example, take cards that nobody uses and make them work somehow. He likes to create like weird combos that nobody thought of, like, why are you playing this card? Part of my plan, twist mustache and stuff like that, and he likes to, in general, likes to explore uncharted territory, likes to discover new cards or new combos and new decks. And deck building is very important for him, because that's how he creates like those unique combinations. And he likes very much like those combo decks that where different cards that seem innocuous come together to create like this weird, crazy effect that like spins the entire game around. I guess the most common parallel to the things we already discussed would be like the simulationist, I guess, or the explorer.
Yeah, definitely.
So a person who really likes, to find out things that nobody else thought of.
They're the ones that do the first turn Black Lotus Fireball, I win.
Maybe, but that's maybe would be more of the third player we're gonna get into. But again, one more important thing. Again, for him, quality is important. The way he wins is important.
Yeah.
Just winning is not good enough. He wants to win the way he envisioned it. He likes to create like sliver decks. Perfect for those guys.
Goblin decks.
Yeah, and well, maybe also sliver decks are good because you have to there are so many different kind of slivers from different kinds of things, so you have to hunt for those rare cards. And slivers are those creatures when you put one sliver and another one sliver, then the slivers kind of exchange abilities and they become stronger themselves, like they support themselves. So each sliver is very weak by themselves, but if you have lots of them out, then it becomes like an incredible powerful combo. Anyway, so that's Johnny. And again, as with Timmy, quality is important. And the third one is Spike. And Spike is the competitive player, the tournament player. And he plays to win no matter what. He also enjoys combos, but only if those combos are destructive. He will also use cards that everybody else uses because they are overpowered.
Yeah,
and he isn't ashamed of using overpowered cards. On the contrary, like, man, this card kicks ass. I'm gonna put 4 of them in my deck.
I like this this quote here. Spike will copy decks off of the internet.
Yes, and the funny thing is, I had exactly at least Johnny and Spike I had in my Magic the Gathering playing group. So Spike would be the kind of person who he would download decks from the internet, he would check decks from the internet, and he wouldn't even get the cards. He would just put pieces of paper in sleeves, and I was like, what the hell is this? No, I'm just trying a deck, man, for the next tournament. It's supposed to be like a Black Lotus.
I can get 4 of those by next turn, right?
Yeah, I can get. I just want to try if this deck works, And then of course then I once played against him, and he had a weird deck where he would get infinite mana, and that always won after rounds so and it was yeah, man, I just got this from internet, awesome. I'm just gonna win this in the next tournament with this.
I remember a deck that mana burned people to death. So they forced players to use their own mana, but they had nothing to spend it on because he had taken all their cards away. So you're just sort of forcing the player to kill themselves in some way. I can't. Spikes, I tell you.
I don't know if that would be a Spike or Johnny. Both like combos, but the difference that Johnny enjoys the combo, whereas Spike enjoys the result of the combo, which is winning.
Yes.
Yes, and they also talk a little bit in the article. They talk a little bit about hybrids, Timmy Johnny hybrids, because they both enjoy quality. But I guess combos with big cards, stuff like that, making cards that are very difficult to summon somehow summonable, and stuff like that. So they talk about the hybrids, but I'm not really convinced about the hybrids, to be honest. I feel this is not the strong point of this taxonomy. I think the strong point of taxonomy is that it is not neat at all.
Yes.
There are no. You can make see some parallels maybe, quality is both important in those, or combos are both important in those, but it's not like a triangle that you can map the entire player population into. They acknowledge that there might be different stereotypes which they just haven't recognized yet. And they also, and again, this is really something that they discovered as they went. It's not really they sat down and create an axis and put cards and combos and stuff like that, and then they figure out what the players do. They really looked at how the players play and really created stereotypes from them. Yes. Of course, the disadvantage at this is that they're not quite as easy applicable to different games.
Yeah.
They're very very focused on Magic the Gathering as a game. So I don't know, what would a Timmy do when he gets into World of Warcraft, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of these still come back to Bartle's thing, because I think that the Timmy is going to be an achiever.
See, but he's also social, so he'd be a social achiever. Like, he would be like a mixture of both.
Well, I guess in the end, each of these taxonomies are different versions of the achiever.
Yeah, they are. That's true.
Because like, the only thing you can do in Magic is win. Or lose.
You always duel against each other, so it's always one of the other people is losing. So it's like kind of like dealing with different types of winning and losing. I feel the best parallel to Bartle is the Explorer with Johnny.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the most common thing. Like, oh yeah, by the way, I wanted to mention, like, Spike is the only difference, like, that the only person that doesn't care about quality of winning, but he cares about the quantity of winning. So if Spike loses 1 game out of 10, he will sulk because he didn't win the 10th game.
Yeah, you're not dominating at all.
Yeah. So he would be, I guess, closest to the killer, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not quite as neat, and that's what I really enjoy about this taxonomy. I really would wish that more games or more game companies would do this kind of research for the games.
I definitely, I wish that they would as well. Do you want to get into our closing topic off of this? The impact of taxonomies?
I would maybe quickly also mention, I really want to mention Connoisseur versus Bro.
Oh, okay.
Because it is a very simple taxonomy. It is from, I haven't written it down. Oh my gosh. Oh no, I did write it down. It is a taxonomy by publishers, actually, by publishers of games.
Okay.
This is... so
this is more of a fiscal thing.
A little bit. It's by Scott Rigby and Troy Skinner. And Scott Rigby is from Immersive, which I don't really know, but Troy Skinner is from Warner Brothers Games. And they made like the presentation at GDC 2000, at the recent one, GDC, I think, which is called Bro Gamer versus Connoisseurs. And I think it's kind of... it's a good response to this common problem that a lot of gamers have, like, oh man, why are games so stupid? You know, why aren't the games as hard as they used to be? You know?
Yeah.
Like something that we also had like in Monster Hunter podcast very frequently.
Yeah.
So they identify just 2 boxes, so it's not really like a step beyond, you know, casuals and hardcore, but they paint like a slightly different picture, and I think this is like a good example of how creating different types of boxes, taxonomies, can make you think differently about games. And so the idea is first a connoisseur and the bro gamer. The connoisseur is the kind of guy who plays a lot and he plays everything. You know, he doesn't stick to a genre or something like this. Like, that's something like a lot of publishers used to think, that people are like, oh, this is a simulation gamer, or this is a I don't know, like fighting game gamer. But that's not really true. Like, if you're really into games, you play everything. Maybe you know, maybe not Barbie Horse Adventures, but maybe like you even do play Barbie Horse Adventures, like an ironical thing on a stream or something. You know? Even that. Yeah, exactly. No genres. He identifies explicitly as a gamer. So he has the gamer T-shirts he wears. You know, he is very open advocate for games. He also like argues for games against people who not play games. He kind of wants games to become popular to some extent. He will buy the Wii for his family, you know, but he won't play the Wii himself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a paradox, and he would actually like hate the Wii, like in open discussions, because the Wii is not deep enough, not challenging enough as a console. But he will still buy it for his family, so to get his family into gaming, you know.
Yeah.
He reads blogs. He's very active on forums. He's usually the person that game developers and game publishers interact with.
Yes.
So they feel, they get the impression that this is the kind of audience they're catering to. This is the kind of audience that they are that play the games. But he's actually overrepresented to some extent.
Yeah, because it's the internet problem, where you can interact with people who are consuming your product, but the person you're interacting with is underrepresented on the internet, and you feel that it's overrepresented, but it's not actually true.
Yeah, it's like the vital minority, so to speak.
Yeah.
because he's actually just 50% or 15% of the audience. And that's actually interesting about them, because they actually have the data, because they're publishers, they have like, statistics. And so they're able to put like numbers on those, which none of the others did actually. Like all of the other taxonomies we spoke about, I guess maybe the Magic the Gathering people probably have some data, but they haven't published it.
Yeah.
And the others we talk about Bartle and stuff like that, that was all qualitative statements. That wasn't actually anything with numbers behind it.
Yeah.
And these people have, so it's like 50% of the audience are like this. And I personally, I see myself a lot in this connoisseur thing. I do a lot of those things that are here and here. And I also specifically mentioned that people who make games are recruited from this circle of people.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, connoisseurs are this kind of, and it explains a lot about games. Also, for example, like the feminism and stuff that we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah, they don't match that model, and why are we talking about them? Why do they matter?
Well, I don't know. Also, 50% is kind of like a difficult number because they don't specify. Like, does this mean that 50% of the sales? Or 50% of the people who buy games are those?
Yeah. This is the problem with game stats, is that they're often not explained.
Yeah, like you can do a lot with numbers if you want to prove your point,
Yeah.
But yeah, they just say 50% of the audience are like that, and then they introduce the bro gamer, which at this point we would probably start introducing the casual gamer. But the bro gamer is a little bit different from the casual gamer, and that's interesting. So the bro gamer is a little different from a casual gamer. He is the kind of person who plays just the best games. He doesn't play every game. He just plays the best ones. Skyrim, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, the biggest, best games. He doesn't have time to waste his time with some kind of obscure, cave shooter or something like this,
Cave story. What?
What is this crap? I want to shoot some people in the face.
This is dumb.
What he seeks for is not depth, not challenge or skill. He wants entertainment.
Yes.
Because for him, games compete with other forms of entertainment. He could just as well go to a movie or go to a club or something. He doesn't have to sit in front of the console and play all the time. It's not the only thing that he does. And so if a game fails to entertain him, he will just walk away. So, for example, if he encounters a challenge that he can't overcome, he won't actually go on the game facts and try to figure out, or he won't practice to get over it eventually. He will just drop the game like it's hot and just move on, do something else. Like, this game sucks. I don't even know what's happening here, man. I paid $60 for this. What a disappointment. He also plays often with his friends, and so he doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of his friends. So he seeks for a quick competence, for instant competence. He wants to be competent at his games quickly. He wants to be able to make like the awesome finishing moves immediately without having to learn them.
So this site sort of sounds like a leftover from the arcade era.
A little bit, maybe. I don't know. What is the arcade?
Where you put in a quarter and eventually, you're done with the game because you can't win, obviously, and so you just walk away and play a different game.
Yeah, you put in corner, you just play, and then you die, and you're like, whatever, I'm just moving on to the next game. I had my fun for my quarter.
Yeah.
You don't try to maximize the quarter or anything. And the interesting thing that they talk about is that it is 65% of the audience against the 15% that the connoisseurs are.
How interesting.
So it is like 5 times the size.
Yeah.
Of the other group, so it is much bigger audience than gamers. And for gamers, like for the connoisseurs, this is like a very distressing situation, because they are often not aware that there's other ways of enjoying people's. Gamers thinks they have figured it out. They are connoisseurs.
Yeah.
They know how games work, and that the way they consume games is the right way to do things. And all the other people are just uninformed connoisseurs. People who just not gotten to their level yet.
Yeah, we see this a lot on the podcast because we get responses like, how could you guys call Halo and Call of Duty the same game? Obviously, you've never played either one of these games, and if you had, you would make the logical conclusion that these games are, in fact, different. Different enough to where they have different names and different styles. How dare you call them first-person shooters?
I am feeling very uncomfortable. Hitting this point so hard again over again. So somebody will be very upset about this. Maybe a good example of this, yeah. Even though the bro game will probably play a lot of Halo because it's kind of like the big thing right now.
What's the bro game? Like
yeah, it's a very bro game.
I guess Call of Duty has sort of taken that mantle away from Halo, but there's all sorts of other problems with Call of Duty, which is the 12-year-old kid. But
yeah, but the interesting is that it's publishers who came up with this, and it explains a lot of decisions that are being made about games nowadays, that people say like, oh man, why is there like a tutorial here that explains me? I know all this stuff already, But a pro gamer may not necessarily know all this stuff already. A pro gamer why do they spell out everything for me? Like I'm paying attention, or it's alright, man. I just let me figure it out by myself. Like the pro gamer won't figure it all out by himself. He just wants to be entertained for the 2 hours that he has time to play this game.
Yeah.
They mentioned a couple of games that it manages to cater to both, and that's why it's successful. The game that they mention is Arkham Asylum. Because you can be very quickly competent in that game. You can just mash the buttons and Batman will perform awesome moves. But there's also like a challenge mode, and there's like special moves that you can really get into it when you are like a very passionate gamer, and like secrets that you can find, stuff like that. I would agree that game, and that's generally like the place where for me like the system falls apart a little bit. Because for example, personally, I had like very heated discussions about how Batman sucks. Where like people try to argue against me, like Batman sucks, not nearly as in depth as God Hand. And I was like, okay, I guess it isn't. And also, like, Batman is a licensed game, and it's also like I think a little popularity of the game, like Batman Arkham Asylum comes from the license because people know Batman, and that's why they buy the Batman game.
I wonder if Smash Brothers falls into this as well.
That would be very interesting to see. I think Smash Brothers nowadays is more about the pro gamers.
Well, what's interesting is like that game is totally just mash buttons, have fun, but you can also become very good at it.
Yeah. So that's the thesis that they have, that in order for a game to be like incredibly successful, you can be very successful just catering to gamers.
Yeah.
And that's what gamers will do instinctively once they become game developers, that they will try to make a game that appeals to themselves.
Yeah.
But in order for a game to be very successful, in the way successful that would pay for the kind of money that it costs to develop a game nowadays, you have to be able to cater to both kinds of players, so the bro gamer and the connoisseur. And what they claim is Arkham Asylum does, and that's what they claim, for example, why the Mass Effect series never got to this very successful state. They are successful, but they're not quite as successful as Batman and Arkham Asylum.
Because they tried to write out like the stuff that made the first game interesting.
Yeah, and the stuff that made the first game interesting was very like geeky stuff, like was the lore and stuff like that. The stuff like bro gamer would never care about, or like item management and stuff like that, and so they tried to broify it, I guess, but they didn't went far enough. Like that's where the entire argument of them falls apart. And there are also like a lot of games that are incredibly successful, which are not really like applicable to this taxonomy.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit challenging taxonomy, and because they're publishers, and so
Yeah, they're trying to sell stuff, which I mean, really, when it gets down to it, that's the only thing that is really started to matter is, can you sell this?
Yeah, and that's interesting because the difference they're making is between successful and incredibly successful. Like between like, oh my gosh, this sold I don't know how many million copies to multiple million copies.
Yeah.
It's for a gamer or for people who play a lot of games or people who enjoy games. This is generally like not a question that they're asking themselves.
Yeah.
And so, there's a kind of like a disconnect between the decisions that are made for making games and the reasons for why people.
The recent Tomb Raider game is probably a great example of this, because it was a successful game. It sold a lot of copies, but Square called it a failure.
Yeah, because it wasn't successful enough.
Yeah.
They still need more. And I feel like in the end, this will probably be a thing that will just break the neck of the game industry eventually.
Yeah.
Because there is just, I don't see any mechanisms or ideas that are being brought up to fix this problem. But that's a different topic altogether that doesn't fix this problem. Even if disregarding this, we have to still acknowledge that there's a lot of people who approach games from a very different perspective.
Yeah.
And this perspective doesn't have to be wrong. Like, if you want games to entertain you, that's completely fine.
The funny thing is, I've been in this conversation about 5 or 6 times this week, where it's people are reacting to something, but the people reacting, Jason Rohrer's new game.
Ah, yes. Mm-hmm.
The people that are reacting to his game are people who study games. But nobody bothers to look at how gamers are responding to what he's doing.
Yeah, well, he did some analysis of that. But yeah, again, a topic that we can maybe go into at some other point.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention, because there's also an article about from Mitch Kropata, a new taxonomy of gamers, which we won't get into. But there's one type of gamer in his taxonomy. He didn't really establish even a taxonomy. I would say one thing that he did was interesting. He took achievers, and he split them into 2 subcategories in completionists. And achievers, like perfectionist and completionist, which I thought it was interesting, something that Bartle didn't do, like to look into how maybe can we create subcategories.
Yeah, I don't know if he could at the time, because there was no gameplay per se, the way that these guys are talking about, like perfecting gameplay, like Dark Souls. Can you perfect the Dark Souls?
Yes, you definitely.
And then the completionist of Dark Souls would be something, they might not be the most perfect gamer, but they'll do everything in the game.
They will get all the achievements, and they will move on to the next game. Whereas the perfectionist will try to make a speedrun or something.
Yeah.
Then he talks about tourists. Which I like very much. Something that I think came up when the developers of the game Myst looked at how people played their game.
Yes.
They were developing Riven, and they tried to, what do people really like about this game? And so they made like this, interview sessions and focus groups, and they found out that a lot of people just don't care about the puzzles in the game, and they really are in the game just to enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the environment. And they really like to look at the world and just walk through it. And they just don't touch the puzzles. They just play the game. They just walk through the game. And they enjoy themselves. And that's why the Riven was very, very differently designed. If you look at the way Riven works, is you can access all of the areas without solving any puzzles.
Oh, that's neat.
And that's something that you couldn't do in the original Myst. And generally, I feel like that's also an interesting thing. Like, for example, like the pro achievers, they will skip cutscenes.
Yeah.
And the tourists will never skip cutscenes, because that's the whole point of the game.
Yeah. It's funny, I've been watching speedrunners all weekend.
Yeah.
And if a cutscene is on screen for longer than like 5 seconds, it's a failure.
Yeah. and the funny thing is that tourists are having like a very opposite, and this causes some incredible, massive like cognitive dissonance and discussions and rage. For example, as Hamburger Helper stuff was, for example, a good example of this, where somebody said, "I just want to skip the fighting because I want to interact with the story."
Yeah.
And they were like, "What? This is the cancer that ruins the game."
And then there's the Metal Gear Solid 4. Oh God!
Which is like all cutscenes.
Yeah, because I've been playing it a little recently, and I'm like, this is so amazing. It's just straight up exposition. I don't have to do anything. It's great.
Yeah. So generally, the attitude of a tourist type of game player is also they don't want to they don't want to fail constantly, because that's not why they're playing the game. They're not playing the game to have the game tell them how much they suck.
Yeah.
They're just playing the game to immerse themselves into a world, to experience it. So JRPGs may be a good place to go for them.
Yeah.
Because I guess you have to do some grinding, but at least you aren't required to have quick reflexes in most cases.
See, there's a whole taxonomy there, because if you look at American or European RPGs, their numbers make sense. You know? Like, you're doing 1 point of damage with your sword, but because it's got this you're doing this. When you look at, like, Final Fantasy, it's like, you just did 8,000 damage! Whoa!
Whoa! Bigger numbers!
It took off 8,000 hit points from this thing that has 400 million! Good job.
Well, that's another thing with JRPGs. Yeah, but I just wanted to mention this. We're not going to go into this more deeply, but I thought I think the idea of a tourist is also a very interesting one, and I feel like one that is also often overlooked, or at least like looked down upon. Like, this is not the right way to play games.
Yeah.
And the games are about interactivity, not about movies. You want to watch a story, you just go watch a movie.
And it's so I think we can move into our closing topic at this point, right?
Yes, please.
So
yes,
one of the way that we wanted to close is talking about the impact or the implications of all these taxonomies. So the sort of thing that's happened is that designers acknowledge these taxonomies where players exhibit them. And I think that there's like this sort of continuum as to whether or not you understand that these things exist. You know, so like these are the things that nobody is, but they're the way that players kind of exhibit their behavior in some capacity. And so, as gamers create as game makers create these games, they're creating them for these specific sorts of players, I feel, and it sort of creates this. These types of gamers will then flock to this game, and so you've got this separation over time of different types of gamers going into different types of games. So it's interesting, just I guess watching it happen, but it's something that I think we don't acknowledge very often. It's sort of this unspoken role that game makers assign gamers, I think.
By the kind of games they're able to play, or by the kinds of characters they can play in the games?
Yeah, so like, you know, Tomb Raider is made for a specific kind of gamer in some way, whereas like Halo is created for a different type of gamer. And then you've got the games that are made for all of those people, which are the big multiplayer games in some way. Maybe I'm being too obtuse here.
Well, I guess some games are more open to different kinds of gamers, I guess, than others. Like more they are like more niche games, or are more like for trying to itch a very specific scratch, so to speak. Whereas other games are more like trucking, for example. I think trucking is a very open experience that everybody can enjoy. Euro Truck Simulator. No, yeah.
There was one paper that that I had put into our thing that you had questions about, like, why is this in here?
I was curious.
And
so can you explain?
So this paper is called "Do Men Heal More When in Drag?" Conflicting identity cues between user and the avatar. So one taxonomy that has come up, or that has come to the fore, I guess, is that. Or to the forefront, I guess, is that there is a difference between a woman gamer and a male gamer, and a man gamer man. And so what this guy tried to do is this Nick Yee, who did a ton of research on MMOs over the course of like the 2000s. He wanted to know if in games like World of Warcraft, if every character in the game that's a woman is a healer or some sort of nurturing thing. If players play a conflicting role, like if a woman plays a massive orc dude, will they conform to the standards that are kind of there in the stereotype? So like a big orc dude would be like a warrior or a hunter or something like that.
Or will still play a typical female perspective by playing a huge orc dude that heals a lot.
And so it can, in juxtaposition to this, will a man playing a female character take on the nurturing roles? Like, will a woman character fall into the healing thing? And so what he did is, this is a longitudinal data study. So they did 1,040 users in, I think it's just World of Warcraft. And what they ended up findings in the current study suggest that we conform to the roles that are expected of our avatars, independent of who we are in the physical world. So this is a taxonomy that is gender-based. And so what the first thing I thought about with this is femships. If a person who plays a female character every time, if they play a male character, will they play the same way? Even if their character, who would normally be a femshep, is a male shepherd?
That's interesting.
So it's kind of there's a lot of implications for this that we just don't have the tools to really explore.
So, by the way, what if? So I'm guessing the study somehow addressed this problem. But what if? What about the way we create characters in those games? Because the way I create a female, I don't decide the gender first, and then go on deciding what kind of class could I do with this gender. I say like, I want to play a healer first. What kind of gender fits to this healer character? And I say like, I'll probably play like, I don't know, female Tauren shaman or something.
Yeah, his words is creating an avatar is a fascinating two-way process. Our findings in the current study suggest that we conform to the roles expected of our avatars, independent of who we are in the physical world. One might assume infinite fluidity within virtual worlds helps us free from physical identities and norms. The opposite appears to be more accurate in this case. And in a particular case of healing, we in fact found that a gender stereotype that isn't true in the physical world becomes true in the virtual world. So for these guys, they're talking, because it's a longitudinal study, so they went with like, what did these characters become? And they tried to focus on new players, not established players.
Okay.
And so what they ended up finding is that, let me see if I can find a part of things.
So wait a minute, I don't understand. So male players who play a female character, will they heal more often or not?
Yes.
They will heal more often?
Yes. So actually, because I'm struggling to go through this article while we're talking about it, what he says here is that while players share a strong stereotype of women preferring to heal, however, they did not find a significant difference in terms of player gender. What they did find was that players enact the stereotype when gender bending. So if a man is playing a woman, that female character, that woman character, is going to be a healer. While
whereas when a woman is playing a female character, she would not necessarily be a healer.
Yes. But if they're playing a male character, then they do the opposite thing. So it's just sort of...
So that's interesting. So again, that's something that confirms a little bit what we were talking about previously, in that if you are talking about a gender that you're not of, then you tend to have a more simplistic view of that gender.
Yeah. So you're,
or at least you won't try to paint too much outside of the lines.
Yes, correct.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And generally, like maybe to again because it's closing thoughts. That's generally something I'm missing, because as you can tell, like those taxonomies are not very comprehensive.
No, not at all.
And they're not very different from each other either. Like they're very much many parallels which we see here. And that's again something I think there's a lot of work to be done here. So if you are like interested into doing like game studies, that would be a very interesting thing to study yourself.
Yeah.
So, for example, one thing that I'm kind of missing is, again, like I think bringing up gender is interesting to see, what, because so far, like if you look at the MTG stereotypes, Magic the Gathering stereotypes, they are like male stereotypes.
Yes.
And so you don't really see like the difference. So, when women are playing Magic the Gathering, what of the three stereotypes are they, which of the three are they preferring?
Yeah.
Or maybe are they a completely new types of personas that female characters create and stuff like that? Female players create.
And it's weird, like all of the different models that we have. I have a feeling that they didn't necessarily ask the gender of the people that they were doing. If women had been equally represented with men in this competitive environment, which competition in and of itself is a masculine sort of trait. I wonder if all of these taxonomies would be the same.
Yeah, generally, like Bartle, we noticed, like the quotes imply the gender that the gender of the socialist stereotype is a female one, whereas all the other ones, well, at least they didn't have any gender clues at all. But they seem more male ones. Also, like not even talking about gender, also talking about age.
Yes.
Like I think Mircea Carpato, which we skipped a little bit, talked a little bit how older gamers like to find the time they invest in the games more precious.
Yes.
So they will like to maximize the enjoyment they get out of a game for the time they invest it in. So they don't want to be grinding stuff, whereas more younger gamers will try to maximize the amount of gaming time they get out of the money they invest. So they will do like the dollars per minute calculation thing. And if it's if it's just a 2-hour experience for $20, then they feel cheated. So that's one of the aspects. Also, like I guess race would be also an interesting thing to consider there. And finally, also like the nationality. Like, what are Europeans against Americans, against Japanese gamers? We hear a lot about how Japanese players are more polite. So I guess they wouldn't have killers, or the killers they have there would maybe behave differently.
I wonder about that, because I mean I know that having played a lot of like Final Fantasy, which is it was a Japanese game first, and Americans just kind of magically appeared one day, unknown to the Japanese players. I saw a lot of different types of Japanese players, and there was definitely a lot of competitors who would like MPK us in some sort of way. So a monster player kill. They would use the game world to murder us so that they could achieve something instead of us. But I don't know if they would do that to their own types of games.
There's still such a long things to discover. And finally, one thing that I found I think most interesting to consider, and like that none of the studies considered so far, is how things change over time.
Yeah.
And how things change from game to game. So if somebody is a killer or a socializer, will they play as a killer or socializer in every game?
Yeah.
Or is this persona they taking on something that they do for this one individual game that doesn't necessarily carry over into other games? I play. They say I'm playing World of Warcraft only to be a dick, and otherwise I'm a super nice person. Stuff like that. And also, if like this changes over time, if you, for example, like something that I also always wondered about Magic the Gathering, because the Timmy player is kind of always this noobish kind of player. Do you start out as a Timmy and eventually mature into a Johnny or a Spike, or will you always stay the Timmy?
Yeah.
And what is the churn rate at which point do people get out of the cycle? Generally modeling a more dynamic taxonomy that takes into consideration a lot of more factors, not just creating like this neat little words, as I said, like from Bartle, like when creating like a idealized world where things are the way they are, and there's like a balance and everything is awesome.
And it's funny, like if you read a lot of the development of Magic the Gathering stuff from Garfield, he said the most troublesome problem Magic is going to have that he couldn't figure out how to get around was the rich kid effect. And I think that the rich kid effect is still plaguing that game because the Spike stereotype is sort of the rich kid disease, where they don't necessarily go and find their own thing. They find what other people have done and then go out and purchase those cards.
Well, they somehow solved this, and that's kind of like a little bit off topic. They solved this a little bit with drafts.
Yeah, sealed decks kind of did away with this. I have to wonder if the Spike person... I wonder how I wonder
what Spike would do in a draft. That's interesting. Maybe the draft also like created like a new stereotype set that we're not aware of. Generally, like I would love to see more of those things. I would like to create like a whole palette of different personas and different taxonomies for gamers, so that when a player, like a new developer, approaches a game and kind of tries to figure out what kind of gamer I'm trying to cater to, what kind of people would be interested by this game, I would have more would be able to construct a better idea before I design the game, and not like in Magic the Gathering where you afterwards, when the game is super popular, you invest the time to analyze who's actually playing it.
Yeah. So I guess what's our ultimate takeaway from this Tavern Talk?
I would say the takeaway is that things are much more complicated than just casual and hardcore.
Yes.
And it's worth reconsidering, like, especially if you're discussing about what's the right way to play a game, what's the wrong way to play a game, to be a little bit more to question your motives. Maybe I am just maybe I just a spike or just a killer or whatever, and I'm just looking down on a very different kind of playing the game, which is all just as valid. It's just like, in my own value system, it just doesn't seem very enjoyable.
So I guess my takeaway kind of goes along with this. One thing that I've sort of been obsessed about lately is player toxicity. We talked about it the other day while we were doing this. I think that probably we get into the whole consciousness level of the type of player that we are. And I think that the players who are the most toxic are the least conscious of the types of players that are out there. I think that the implications for a lot of the player types end up being that we start to try to separate ourselves from the different types we don't really enjoy. And so ultimately, I guess that my takeaway would be, games are designed with a myriad of people in mind, different roles in mind, and that we should probably be more conscious of the types of people who we're playing against and with.
Definitely. And that's definitely something you have to consider when you are designing your own games.
Yeah.
Because that's where if you are designing games just for you, then you will have a bad time.
Yay.
So maybe to finish like on a positive note. So which of the types of players that we talked to appeal most to you?
To me,
what kind? Yes.
I'm definitely a social player.
You said already you are the socializer from Bartle.
Yeah,
right?
I really enjoy talking to people because I like to see what they don't like and what they do like. But I do have some killer tendencies. I would say.
Yeah, you're a little bit of a subversive player sometimes.
I enjoy.
You like to rock the boat.
Yeah, I in most things I am a disruptor, and so the killers are definitely disruptors in some capacity. And I mean, this is me. I was just talking about we should be more conscious of this, and the whole point of my disrupting is typically to make a person either question what they're doing or question what I'm doing. And so that I think that's where I fall. Where do you fall in this?
I again, I'm not really sure. From the three from Magic the Gathering stereotypes, I was probably somewhere a little bit Timmy, but certainly Johnny sounded very interesting. Like the entire, like most of the people I played with were Johnnies, where we were always trying to find different decks, and they would always fail horribly. Yeah. But there were kind of cool ideas, and it was like kind of interesting to experiment with different setups. So that's something I feel like very very familiar with.
I was definitely I would construct decks that had a terrible theme, that were horrible to try and get out, but that one time that it managed to get out, I was happy. And so,
yes, the Leviathan is flying.
Yes, oh thank God.
The Kraken, I have awakened the Kraken.
Yay.
12. I need to sacrifice an island every turn, but whatever. I have a huge creature.
I only need it out for 2 turns. I got 2 lands. That's enough.
That's all I need anyway, because it will just crush the opponents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I also I'm not like that myself. But I like tourists.
Yeah,
something I generally enjoy. Like some people I enjoy the kind of work you put into a game, into the world, who really like to immerse themselves into a world, without necessarily like going for the challenges.
Yeah.
And of course, I must admit, sometimes I'm just a huge completionist.
Well, what's funny is the bro gamers have been annoying me lately, mostly because everyone I know is a bro gamer. They play the game that's popular on Twitter for like a week, and then they move on to the next game. And it's like, hey, I'm still back here playing a game that was out last year. Do you guys want to play? No, it's not new. I'm like,
it's old, whatever. Yeah, my professor was at Cologne Game Lab was also definitely a pro gamer. He was just playing the newest one, and I'm like, man, you should get like Dark Souls. That's interesting. Like you're like, maybe I will try it eventually. And he never did.
No, he never will. And it's like, you're missing out on like depth. I think. I don't think you ever...
But you know, on the other hand, I mean, I can understand. He, like, my prof had like a living style. He would never have any time to invest into a game like this. So him playing like Call of Duty all the time, that was cool.
Yeah.
He was enjoying himself. He was definitely had some fun.
All right.
All right, let's finish this up, guys. Post your comments in the comment section right now, and of course. Also post what kind of typology, what kind of type of players appeal most to you. We would like to see, you know, what kind of audience we have here, or maybe is there some kind of aspect of gaming which you felt wasn't covered by those taxonomies. Post it in comments as well. Maybe we can create our own awesome taxonomy of gamers and playing. And
yeah, there's also taxonomies that we kind of skipped over.
A little bit.
There's a bunch. I mean, there's a billion of them out there. We tried to cover popular ones. So if there's one that you enjoy, let us know.
Yes, definitely. So I hope you enjoyed this new episode of Tavern Talk. I hope we haven't been laboring for too much. Blabbering, is that a word?
Sure.
I know it's a word in German.
It's the beauty of English. We can do whatever we want. It's a word. Blabberification, that's what we've done.
Blabberification, that's right. Also, if you have any suggestions for topics that we should cover in the next episode, post them as well in the comments. And we will be back on the next beautiful episode of Tavern Talk. Until then, wish you good luck, and remember, truck on.
Get on the truck or die trucking.
Keep the trucking alive.